Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Ag Forecast brought to you by Agrible, the makers of Morning Farm Report. Our software gives growers the insights to make the best decisions possible about their operations. Well, let's start off by taking kind of a top-down look to the overall flow of the atmosphere. What we're looking at here is late in the night on Sunday and early Monday morning on October the 2nd. We're seeing the overall flow here basically building into a rather substantially large trough that's really kind of been the overall flow pattern for several of our last days. Let's go back maybe even 2 weeks here. And the important thing about this flow pattern is what it does right here in the center part of the country. We've been discussing this in each update. This flow pattern gives a lot of upper level support to the development of showers and storms across this region. And it's been very, very wet here while the eastern Corn Belt's been dry. Well, we've got to see what this trough is going to do over the coming days and what it's going to do in mid-October, because basically the trough and ridge flow pattern throughout the United States is what really determines, our fall weather. So let's get right on into this. Now, I got to show you some pretty cool stuff that happened during the day on Sunday. You're watching a satellite animation here of the huge storms that blew up across parts of Colorado, parts of Kansas, and Nebraska. We can see huge anvils spreading on top of these large thunderstorms. And honestly, looking at this reminds me of what we typically see in May. Well, that's because when big troughs like the one you just saw come across the Great Plains in May, they kick off a lot of severe storms. Now, in total, we had 41 separate reports of severe weather, and most of those reports coming from hail, although we did have 4 tornado reports right here in parts of north central Kansas. So let's kind of take a look at one of the really interesting storms that happened. This is a picture here in north central Kansas, and you're seeing actually the lowering of the cloud base here into a feature we call a wall cloud. And usually emerging from the wall cloud would be a funnel cloud, and when that touches ground, we call that a tornado. Now, what's kind of neat about this is how this forms. Generally in this whole area we have rising air. This is the main updraft of the thunderstorm. And this updraft rotates in a counterclockwise direction as it ascends, at least for most supercells it does. And therefore, all the precipitation is being made in this updraft, and it falls out here into this downdraft. What's neat about the storm is that these supercells are able to kind of re-ingest or pull back in the really juicy air they create in their downdraft back into their main updraft. And by pulling in that juicier air, you get this lowering of the cloud base, which we call the wall cloud. And because it's tightly spinning, it's from inside here where the funnel cloud and tornado emerge. So kind of a neat thing to be seeing here in this great picture from Freddie McKinney that was taken here in Kansas. Now, that same storm produced some pretty large hail. A picture from Grady Dixon here shows you some hail that's probably almost 3 inches in diameter. Very, very large and heavy hailstones that will do a lot of damage. So it's kind of strange to kind of see this late season severe weather. We'd expect more of this in May, but this is what happens when the jet stream gets stuck in that configuration. Now, the second consequence is all of this rain. With that persistent troughing feature over the west over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of rain slowing down the harvest, basically from Texas all the way up to Minnesota. Very, very heavy rains, while the eastern Corn Belt has been very, very dry. Parts of Illinois, I know it looks like we've had some showers and storms here. Well, parts of Illinois are between 10 and 60% of average rainfall over the last month. So this has been quite dry in the eastern Corn Belt. A lot of progress made on harvest here, but very wet across the central part of the country. So what are things doing? Well, inside of that deep trough, we have some serious snowfall that's expected to come here out of parts of Montana over the next 24 to 36 hours. Basically, winter storm warnings are out for that region, as they are for the higher country here in the mountains of Colorado. Again, all of that deep inside that trough. So important thing to be seeing here, big time winter storm hitting Montana. In fact, here's the total snowfall projected by the GFS model. Some of the higher country in Montana might be seeing better than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches of snowfall, maybe some locations better than 10 inches over the next 24 to 36 hours. So this is our setup, and we got to pay attention to what that trough is going to be doing in the near term. So let's take a look at it, because it's going to be very important for our Corn Belt weather. Well, you just saw play out the next 10 days of the position of the troughs and ridges. Let's take a look back at the beginning here. On Monday, we're going to see that deep trough here spreading into a ridge over the eastern third of the country. So we're going to have some much cooler weather here inside the trough and some warmer weather spreading to the east. Now, for a lot of us here in the eastern Corn Belt, we got a nice cool down. In fact, some parts of Ohio may have gotten cool enough to see some frost in some low-lying areas. But that cooler weather is on the way out as that trough digs deeper out west and helps build a ridge over the east. Now that pattern is going to stick around for most of this week. And what that means is we're going to return back to those warmer temperatures, back into the 80s for parts of the Corn Belt here because of that ridge. But what I want you to really key in on, is what we're starting to see by the time we get out here, let's call it the next Sunday. So this is October the 8th. And what we see here is a pretty substantially deep trough kind of digging in. And I've been watching this now for 4 days, and the model's been pretty consistent with the formation of this broader trough. Big ridge pushes out east, warming them back up, and that trough finally translates to the east. And this might bring, especially for the northern parts of the Corn Belt, so think parts of the Dakotas into Minnesota, southern Wisconsin, Iowa, northern Illinois, and Indiana, this could be bringing in our first actual significant threat of frost. Now, this is, again, several days out. We're looking out here to the 10th of October, but I'm seeing this pattern really establishing and digging pretty deep. So I'm going to be watching all week long for the potential for this frost. I'll keep you updated again on our Thursday morning video update. So that's what we're looking out for. Let's take a look at precipitation over that same time period. What's animating here, and I'll start it back over at the beginning, is our forecast kind of in 24-hour chunks. So look at this. Monday, we see the remnants of the storms pushing up into this part of the country. As we slide forward from Monday into Tuesday, we can really see that same area getting hit as that trough really doesn't want to move too much to begin our week. Here's the snowfall that's happening in Montana. But as we move forward, by the time we get into Wednesday and Thursday, it may be by that time period that the eastern Corn Belt gets its first chance at seeing some rain in quite some time. So we're going to have to watch out for that closely. But what's important is that as that trough finally starts to migrate to the east, this is when by next weekend we could start to see precipitation for some regions that have been very, very dry in the eastern Corn Belt. So watching that pretty closely here. But it looks as that trough establishes itself and really starts to push out, that most of the rain will move over toward the east, drying out a big section of the Corn Belt. So our 10-day precipitation outlook looks wet in the center states to start the week, and certainly snowy up in Montana. But as we get toward the middle and end of this week, we're going to watch for that trough to move to the east, cooling the temperatures down and bringing in that chance of some precipitation late in the week and really more toward the weekend. So that's what we're looking at in the longer term. Now let's take a quick look at Brazil as we kind of finish this up. And here's what we're going to do is we're going to look at the last 7 days of precipitation as measured from satellite. We can see through parts of Brazil that we did get some showers and thunderstorms, some widespread rain across parts of the main growing regions. In fact, toward the end here, a pretty big squall line kind of moving through parts of Argentina and the southern growing regions. But where we really need this rain to move in here is the northern growing regions. Think Mato Grosso do Sul, because it's been quite wet down here in parts of Argentina, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul. So it's got even more rain. And what this really tells me is that this is not perfect and ideal for planting. We need more rain in the north and less rain in the south to really get things going. So as we look over the next 2 weeks at precipitation anomalies, what we are tending to see here is that this region in through here is going to stay wet, all right? While the northern growing region, so this is part of Mato Grosso do Sul, is going to be tending to stay dry. So that's week 1. Same pattern for week 2. We really need to get a couple of inches of rain here to really get things established. We get that soybean crop in, but it's tending to stay wet in the southern growing regions down through here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. Hope you found this informative. Look forward to talking to you again on Thursday. Thank you.